Hello and welcome to OzDox. This is Listen Up, a Masterclass in Sound. We're welcoming tonight our streaming audience and we hope you enjoy tonight. We've got a very interesting panel and a great series of issues and clips to show. It's going to be quite a night. Welcome also to our audience here at Afters. We're very happy to have such a good crowd, and when I first said that we're going to do a night on sound, I can hear an echo there, we've got plenty of sound. David White, who's on our panel, said, when I said OzDox hasn't actually done a night on sound, we said, oh yeah, that'll be typical. Something like that. Which is rather embarrassing that, you know, OzDox does, once a month we have a session on issues to do with documentary or technical aspects or anything to do with documentary. And the fact that we haven't done sound, I think I should offer you all an abject apology on behalf of OzDox. But here we are, we're doing it. But I'd like to just start off by acknowledging country and say that we're meeting tonight on the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and we express our respects to elders past, present and future. Always was and always will be Aboriginal land. OzDox, as I've mentioned, is a very accessible organisation. All you have to do is come to our website and sign up, and you'll get our monthly newsletters. Well, not really a newsletter, it's just notice of events. And we also welcome your participation on the OzDox committee. It's just a bunch of volunteers who come up with ideas for sessions, and you're most welcome to put forward ideas of something that you'd like to see and hear about discussed in relation to documentary. So please join us, put forward ideas and spread the word. For tonight, we're going to have basically three sessions. I'll introduce the panel. We've got Leo Sullivan and Philip Myers, who are two working sound recordists, which is a great combination.
Oh, we try to.
And they're going to be doing a kind of double act, talking about some of the issues of acquiring sound on location. We've got David White, who was sound recordist, now works mostly in the sound post-production, the back end. And that's when all the problems really get seen, and David's going to be giving us insights into that process. And we've got Ross Boyer, who's kindly brought a lot of his toys from Lemac. Thank you, Ross, for schlepping it all tonight.
Pleasure.
And Ross is going to be showing us some of the latest equipment. Some of the stuff only just came in this week, I understand. So plenty of toys to look at. And then we're going to have plenty of time for questions at the end. So that's tonight. Alan, could we just have the house lights up for a minute or so? I just want to get an idea of who's in the audience tonight. How many of you, for instance, have shot and basically acted as a one-person crew, been out on location shooting and sound recording? That's probably about half the audience, which is probably about 30, 35 people. Okay. And how many of you are involved in sound post-production in some way? That's about 10 or so, 10, 12. Okay. Great. So you know who your audience is to pitch to.
Sound recording.
And any actual sound recordists? Quite a few. All right. 7 or 8. Great.
And most importantly, who's got a budget to employ sound recorders? Oh, this is one.
1.5. Yeah. All right, so thank you very much, panel, for coming tonight. I'm going to kick off. We're going to start at the end, which seems a bit strange, but David White, firstly, let me tell you about David White, for those of you who don't know. David is a sound editor, done many things in the course of his career, but most recently, most famous for being the sound designer of the 2015 film Mad Max Fury Road, for which he won an Oscar, and I think that deserves a round of applause. We we don't have too many holders of Oscars on our panel, so it's great to have you here.
Or,
But
or the holder of the Mr. Potato Head. I thought we'd bring along.
wow, I haven't seen one of those before.
So whoever's speaking can have this.
Okay, fantastic. Okay. Now, David sees he's down to the gritty end. After everybody's tried to record the best sound they can and edit it the best they can, then they give it to David and say, "Can you fix it, please?" And we've all heard it, you know, the saying, "It'll be fixed in the mix." Well, David's in the mix, and so he cops all the problems that we pass on. And he's going to give us the benefits.
It's all your fault, all of you guys.
He'll give us the benefits of his experience and tell us about some of the problems and maybe even some of the solutions, David.
Okay, thank you very much for that introduction, Rod. I'd like to know how many people are here who want to shoot a documentary at some stage, who've never actually done one. So there's one couple here. Okay, great, cool. Because that's obviously a part of it, is people who have shot these things before and produced these documentary projects and tried to capture the material there, and then those that are wanting to step in and give it a go. And I salute you all, actually, because it's an incredibly difficult format to... well, firstly, you might not have a very solid narrative when you go out to shoot your film. You might be discovering a lot of the narrative on the way, or as in some cases, you might be shooting one particular storyline and then something else happens midway. So that sort of ability to be flexible with your narrative is what you also need, the same sort of agility with both shooting it on camera and capturing it with sound. But anyway, if I could just speak sort of more broadly, you know, what is it that acquiring a good soundtrack is going to do for your production? Well, if I can suggest to you that overall, for me, the sound is the biggest element that's going to communicate emotion to your audience. And that's whether it's in a drama, a feature, or a documentary, various other formats. But you know, getting the sound right and getting the texture right will put your audience in a place where they can actually listen to your program and get involved in the story. And that's what you want. You don't want people in your audience noticing all the crap problems that happened on set with dialogue they can't hear and wind noise and all that sort of stuff. So, you know, if you acquire some good sound for your documentary in post-production, you can get a little bit towards that, but you can only do that if you've done the planning in pre-production to enable yourself to capture the raw material that we need to work with in post-production. So, you know, just as a general, we want to keep the audience in the story. We don't want to lose them. We don't want them to be distracted. We just want them to stay there. We want to create the environments where your characters and these scenes can play out, where we're not distracted by changes of environments, like, you know, cars cutting out in between takes or birds at the end of one shot when they're not on the next shot, all that sort of stuff. And hopefully also create a sound design that's empathetic with the narrative. So that's our end game, I think, is we want to get there. We want to get so that when you're in post-production, you get the appropriate soundtrack to tell your story. And there is not a rule that says, oh, if I did this soundtrack and that worked really well, so the next doco that comes along, I'm just going to do all of that again. That never happens. What happens is that the story always directs what we do in sound. And I'd say that applies on location to a large extent as well, but it certainly is the number one rule in post-production. So I just generally want to do an overview of what I have to deal with at the end by describing what happens at the beginning. So planning in pre-production is a big problem, I think, in documentaries as a general, in terms of what are the sound requirements. It's all well and good to go, well, we need a camera person, and we'll take the producer as well, because they've got all the notes and they can do the interview as well. We don't even have to pay for an interview. We'll get the producer to do that. So now it's a two-person crew, and yeah, right, let's go. Oh, and camera person's got a radio mic, and there's a camera mic. That's awesome. Rock. Out we go. Yeah. You know, and that's all well and good. And for some programs, that's all you need to do. You'll be fine. It'll be pretty crappy, but it'll be fine. But, you know, where do we want to land with that? So really, if you're making a documentary that has any sort of theatrical possibility, or you want to get it on SBS or ABC or whatever, some other broadcaster, you really want to put some planning into what is that sound component right at the start, not starting the shoot and going, oh my God, like I've done before, 5 days into a shoot and going, I haven't even thought about the sound. And I'm a sound guy. So I fully admit that this stuff happens. You're so caught up trying to capture the story that's all you're doing. But please, planning is a significant part of the area here. Does the budget actually cover a sound recordist? It's kind of like a lost art now, isn't it, sound recording? Well, in the old days, I could go on when the Nagras were heavy and expensive and you didn't have one, there's only a few people had them. Sound recorders. And you had to use them.
One in my garage.
There you go. Now, what that meant, though, was because of the lack of access to the equipment that was required, the people operating that equipment were professionals. They knew how to put a microphone on the end of a boom pole and to manoeuvre that over the action and get it next to this man's face and then over here and then over there and, do the whole dance of microphone movement, because that's what you've got to do with the boom. You can't just sort of put it up there and go, oh, right, sweet, now we'll just go and have a fag. How easy is this? That's all you need to do for sound. Piece of, isn't it? It's not that. So does the budget cover a sound recordist? This is a really important thing. And if it doesn't, let's actually just face that head on. And if the camera person's got to do it, let's just say, for sake of the argument, how many sound people have been asked to do camera work, to be second or third camera? But I think most camera people have been asked to do the sound work.
Yep.
So let's get real about that. The budgets aren't suddenly, because of what we say tonight, budgets aren't going to double overnight. Screen Australia's not going to go, yeah, we got more money for the sound component of your job. No, it's not going to happen. So let's be practical about that. If the camera person doesn't know how to use a microphone, maybe they should spend a day at the film school or with Leo or with somebody who does.
They ring me all the time.
Yeah, well,
All my mates ring me. Why do I do this G3 thing again?
Yeah, well, maybe you should do a class and actually offer that to camera people to teach them how to use microphones. Because I come across this all the time in post where, camera person, to the best of their ability, they've gotten a radio mic and they've planted it there and quick roll. And you can see it, blowing around in the wind, and you can see that it doesn't have a wind gag on it anyway. And you can hear it, the input is turned up too loud, so it's all distorting anyway even before it leaves the bloody transmitter. There are so many really, really, really fundamental problems.
But you can fix all that stuff, can't you, Dave?
Well, there's an amount that can be done, but if you plan to fix it in the mix, put some more money into the Soundpost budget right now.
Put my fee into his pocket.
Yeah. But it is a real thing. You get camera people doing that, and even worse, you get people who've never been on set, never done a shoot, and they rock up, oh, and you're going to be doing the sound, by the way. So they haven't even sat down with the equipment, turned it on, play with it. It's just, no, we're shooting, go. That happens all the time. It sounds like I'm exaggerating, but it is totally real.
I had somebody buy a recorder system, went to Africa. I got a phone call 3 weeks later. It's not working. How do I make it work? Well, you bought it 3 weeks ago. Did you open the box in Sydney? No. I got to the middle of Africa and I opened the box and I haven't read the manual either.
Oh, God.
So, and I get a lot of camera people coming in all the time going, I've got to do sound. Give me a sound kit. Jeez, does it cost that much?
Well, that broadly touches on this other point that I wanted to make, which is that, it's great with the advancements in technology. Now the cameras are much smaller and, we can take our little GoPros and we can take our glorified SLRs, all sorts of cheap things that we can actually take, and they're recording bloody 4K. So, of course you're going to use them. So this miniaturisation, a lower cost, fantastic. It's more accessible to people to go and make the programs. That's awesome. We want to tell stories, so let's have more of that. But let's try and use those devices properly to capture usable material that is going to make your program much better in the end if we can hear it. These are critical things. It's not like 20 or 30 years ago when we had a Nagra and 16mm Arri. Maybe you're shooting Super 16. Oh, radical. You know, so it weren't like all the multiple formats. Now there are so many different formats, so many different recorders. Just looking over to my left-hand side here, I can see multiple microphones and transmitters and shotguns and God knows what else, you know, stuff that I've never played with. This technology is coming out all the time. So it's flooding onto the market, and in post, typically what happens is then some poor sucker like me has got to deal with camera mic, GoPro mic, some other lipstick camera mic, a camera like that with the boom up the top, then an SLR style camera, which has also got a camera mic. Maybe one of them's got a little lapel connected directly to the camera and then to the character, so you can actually hear the cable hitting the body of the SLR during an interview. I mean, the number of crazy sources like this. Oh, then you've got all the portable recorders like Zoom recorders and stuff. So if you know, if they're going off for a ride on their motorcycle for 5Ks and you can't ride with them, off, quick, off.
I'm sure these guys will have something to say.
Oh,
about that.
absolutely.
5K is a win noise.
Yeah. So, you know, I mentioned this thing about planning, but it is very important to have a bit of a think about what are you actually going to be capturing in front of the camera. Like last year, I worked on that program Struggle Street, which dealt with you know, welfare dependency, drug dependency, domestic violence, you know, poverty, all sorts of pretty gritty issues. And it was one of those classic documentaries where you've just got no idea when something is going to happen. So, you know, you can rock up at the start of the day, and I can't actually recall who the recordist was on that, but no doubt the recordist would have gone, here we go again, you know, and mic up the people where he or she thinks the action is going to happen. But then it actually happens with this other person that's just arrived on the scene and they come running in and belt someone up or something like that. You know, you don't have a radio on them, so suddenly you're scrambling to them with a boom, if you're lucky, because you might be out shooting something else in the meantime. My point is that there are so many variables in so many of the types of documentaries that we do. You really need to be prepared for them because they are totally different to the other form of documentary, which is where we've got, you know, half of our show is going to be 10 minutes of interviews with boring people like myself, just a close-up going blah, 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 and then we'll cut to something, and then cut back to me, and then cut to you, and then, you know. So that one, this is one of those documentary situations where you don't need to be so full-on about planning in pre-production.
So David, the lesson is for those of you who are thinking about making a film, or for your next film, to really put your head into the sound department as well as the camera department, and possibly or preferably to come and talk to whoever's doing the sound post-production and talk about some of those issues.
Yeah, it's vital. I just want to cap, just before we move off this sort of general discussion about recording challenges, if I was to summarise the issues that I face in post-production, and I'd say everybody does, in terms of microphones, and these things are all things that can be controlled by planning. Wind noise, microphone handling noise, clothing interference on the subject, poor microphone placement, just not on the right part of their bloody body, too much gain on the transmitter and getting too far away from the transmitter receiver so you get signal dropouts. I encounter these problems all the time, and all of them can be mitigated by a bit of learning and a bit of planning. So that's a positive to take away. You can deal with these things because, like I said before, you're not about to get another 10 grand in your budget tomorrow for a sound recordist if you don't have that budget level. So I just wanted to move on quickly to so you've gone and shot all your material on all these different sources. You can imagine in post-production, if your labelling system is not logical and if it doesn't make sense, how the hell do I know whether this sound file, because once it's in my system, it's just a bunch of sound files. So I need to know, does this come from a GoPro? Does this come from a Zoom recorder? Is this the main camera mic? I don't know. So this stuff's got to be labelled. You know, you've got to really plan when you go and start recording. And if you've got these multiple sources, which you will, make sure they're all labelled. Make sure that when you start at the start of the day, it's actually got the date. You know, it's actually got the program title. You know, it's basic stuff like that. which, pardon me, makes things so much easier in post-production, where you have to go looking for these things to try and discover where they've come from. So that's all I'll say about recording, because you guys obviously have way more to provide there.
Well, actually, on that point, actually, just make sure that whatever equipment you're using, it's got the time of day at least on it. Because a lot of times people just put a battery in something and just start recording or filming, and they haven't even thought about that. But actually, it's quite significant that you have some sort of consistency. And so just get the time of day on your equipment right, and then
date.
And date, yeah, and
so
go from
you know
there.
what day you've been shooting it on.
At least, and then some consistency of the way you're actually doing something.
It's a good point, though. On location, if you put a battery in there and you press record, you're recording. In post-production, you don't know about the circumstances. You just get all these sound files and you go, what the hell is this? So, I get the urgency with needing to record, but yeah, at least time of day.
Yeah, that's right.
Nice
a lot
point.
of time people don't and especially across all your devices, because these days you've got cameras, you've got GoPros, you've got multi-track recorders, and try and get some sort of consistency. Even if it's slightly out, it doesn't matter. At least you can get it as close as possible. It would be ideal, of course, if it's all time code sunk. But if it's not, get it as close as possible, and then it makes it a little bit easier when you're actually bringing it all together later.
And another very simple technique is just do a voice announce. This is the 3rd of October. It's I'm shooting Fred on his bike. At least something that they've got to work with.
Yeah. Makes all the difference.
I mean, both is good.
So then let's cut to the picture editing, which probably is where you'll spend most of your time on a documentary if you haven't spent even more time shooting it. All I'd say about the picture edit is make sure you ingest all of the material. So at the stage where you're deciding, we didn't really capture anything on that day, we won't bother. Mistake. Don't do that. Just ingest the whole bloody lot of it so that you can assess it all as a whole and then chuck out what you don't want. But not pulling stuff off tape means that when it comes to sound post, then I go, did you guys capture an atmosphere of that or a wild track of that bit? They go, we didn't ingest those tapes. Oh, okay, so now we're going to go and find those tapes. Don't dick around with that. Just put it all in there. With all the metadata. Don't chuck out the metadata. Don't go, we don't need WAV files, we'll make them AAFs. Don't do that. Keep the metadata. Second thing I'd like to say about picture edit. Logical track layout is something you should just stick to, and I think this applies to all formats in the picture editing, but you'd be, I'm surprised constantly how inconsistent it is from editor to editor. I mean, most people have their own styles, but if I could suggest a layout, it would be your sync dialogue is on tracks 1 to 4 or 1 to 6. On tracks 7 and 8, you've got your voiceover and your voiceover alternates or your voiceover guide track. And then, 9, 10, 11, 12, your music, stereo pairs, nice and easy. Another pair for your effects and Atmos, and maybe a couple of monos for mono effects. Just do it like that and stick to that. The number of times, like the first part of the process, excuse me, for me, when I get the material, and for other people say, let's open up the AAF. And the AAF is the way that the sound and picture from the Avid or whatever you're using can be translated to Pro Tools, which is the format, the software that I use, right? So there's this little AAF file, and you open it up and import that into a new Pro Tools session. You go, okay, cool, we'll start splitting this stuff up so we can start working with it. And my typical split up, just by the way, I'll just jump forward to that. So I copy that AAF over to the system, get the pictures over there as well, open up my Pro Tools, import these tracks and go, right, I'm going to split it into the following categories. And I think you should set these into your head and just always work like this. So voiceover narration always goes on a track all of its own. Dialogue, 6, 8, 12 tracks, however many tracks you need for dialogue. Interview dialogue, separate that from the straight up dialogue. So interview dialogue is where I've got a camera on Ross and I'm saying, what do you reckon about how this is going, Ross? And he starts blabbing away, and we cut to here, he's still blabbing, that's still interview, and we cut back to Mr. Blabber over here. That's all interview. So that stays on the interview tracks. Sync effects, I'm trying to be quick here, Ross. Sync effects is, of course, when people are just walking around and doing all this sort of stuff but not talking, most of which is normally split out of the actual talking, then they do something. So we'll split that into the sync effects track. Then we've got effects, Atmos, music, and source. Now, for me, source is any of your archival material. So if you're using archival grabs from TV shows or rock concerts or whatever, that stuff's already been mixed and compressed. So we don't want to recompress that like we're doing the rest of the show. So I always split that off separately. Also, that means that when you're doing the deliveries, if for some bizarre reason they want that as a separate item, you've got it. So I always split it up like that. Now, should we play a clip? We haven't played any clips.
Yeah, let's do something visual.
So,
audible.
Yeah, it's got some vision. So I've just got. Oh, look, I recently worked on this 4-part doco called Motorkite Dreaming, which has some good examples of multiple camera formats. Lots of issues with GoPros because these two guys are flying around in these little crafts and you can't be up there with the camera crew, so it's just GoPros up there, Pretty bizarre. But if our friends up in heaven or wherever they are,
Ready for us, Alan, up in heaven?
could you do the DW3, the Fire BG dialogue one? Because we're going to get to talking about dialogue and what's usable and what's not usable.
Okay.
I hear a voice.
There you go.
We can see you. We can see you. Hello. How you going? Oh, I'm so much happier now. And I fell onto the wires. I'm surprised my fucking jugular didn't get see. Oh my god.
Well, I was hoping you brought the trailer. I thought that's probably why they're taking their time. They've got to get all that fuel off. Because this thing ain't getting out of here by air. No. Why is that? You want to fight?
In the dark, Aiden can't tell if the trike can be repaired. This may be the end of the road.
Right. Now, the reason I wanted to play that is because, that sounds reasonably smooth, but compared to what it was when I got it. So you've got, there's a couple of GoPros in the truck as they're driving up. There's a camera person in the back trying to hold his or her balance, because the camera's going like this all over the shop. But you're using dialogue from the car while they're driving under those circumstances. Then they get out, and we walk over with the camera over to the two girls come together. There's a big fire over here which is going because they've just chucked all this gum leaves onto it, so that's going crazy. And then the two guys who are flying the craft get over there and look at the broken aeroplane. Now in the background, the whole time, we don't hear it there, but the whole time, the two girls are still talking off screen. Now, as far as the audience is concerned, sitting and watching that scene, the fire is totally unimportant. The conversation with the two girls that are off screen, which doesn't make sense anyway because it's cut between what's happening in front of us, not what's happening behind. That doesn't make any sense to anybody either. Then they're both wearing flight suits, which are like plastic, and they're going the whole time. So, in fact, a dialogue clip like this, it's here's a word, here's another word, here's a few words, then there's a whole lot of noise from the microphone, and then there's another word, and then the girls are talking, and then, So in terms of what's got to happen in post-production is we've got to just get those words, get rid of all that other crap. We don't want to hear the rustling around and stuff, and then fill in that track so it doesn't sound like there are holes all through it. Mm. So just for what's that, like 20 seconds, 30 seconds? It's going to take you a few hours to do that, just to fix up that one clip. So each time you're launching into one of these recordings and going, it'll be fine, we'll fix it in post. Yeah, awesome. Well, we can do a lot there, but it takes time, which is why I'm saying if you're going to, it's by no fault of their own, largely. This is largely a byproduct of the type of shoot they're doing. It's so crazy and wild,
It's the circumstances, but we going out there gathering material I suspect all of us would vastly underestimate the amount of time that it would that it would take you. I mean, if that's
Yeah.
that's
Well,
a very
every-
short clip, but it would have taken you half a day.
Every single clip that winds up on my dialogue tracks, you got to do that. You got to go through, get the bits out of it that actually have meaning to our story, and then ditch the rest of it. Oh, so now we don't have anybody walking. So if we've got 10-second handles, which you must do all the time, 10-second handles when you export, then we pull out, oh, there's a couple of feet there that are in the clear. Great, we can use that and put them in when they're walking and, try and fill it in as quickly as possible. Boof, next clip. Next clip. Next clip. Now, you want to be doing that to every clip, and that's just on the dialogue. Then you want to do that to every clip that's on your interview tracks. Then you want to do that to every clip that's on your sync effects tracks. So now we're almost ready to start mixing. But that's got to happen first. So these, the number of docos that get thrown my way where they go, oh, it's a 10-hour mix. I go, really? What are you expecting me to do in 10 hours? I mean, you can mix a show in 10 hours, but it's not going to be...
You were also saying that budgets come in woefully inadequate with the amount of time left for the post-production side of things, and they're tending to be squeezed just as everything else is getting squeezed. And I know as a producer that you get to that stage of production, they've only got a certain amount of money left anyway, so the squeeze is really in on your side.
The squeeze is profound, for sound posts, because the fact is we're right at the end of the process. So you're on location and we need to shoot one more day here. Oh well, okay. There's money in the budget still at that stage. No, we are going to have to get that helicopter shot now. Well, although now you just do it with a drone now, but in the past you go, okay, well we do need the shot. Damn it, let's do it. So there you go. You got your helicopter shot. When you come around to sound post, all the contingency's gone. That's what typically happens with Australian productions. And I can't tell you how frustrating that is, because people like me want to do a good job on your films, and yet when you go, well, you've got 10 hours, that's all we've got, which is what happens all the time. You go, well, how much fun is this going to be? And what sort of result are we going to get? And typically, I mean, again, just jumping way forward, I would say that if you're a producer, one thing you do not want to do is skimp on the sound mix. You want to be able to sit there after your professional sound people have done their own pass on it, and they're now playing to you a mix. You want the time to be able to sit there and go, yeah, actually, I don't like that voiceover. Can we try another take for that? Oh, that music's way too... Oh, actually, that music's wrong. Can we change that cue? I don't like those. You need the time to be able to do that. Actually, we don't need that word. Can we lose that word? You need the time to be able to do that. So what typically happens is, okay, give me a 10-hour mix. I'll do as best as I can in the 10 hours. Then I'll play it for you. It's already 11 hours now. We've played it. Oh, now fix-ups. Oh, 4 hours of fix-ups. So what time are we planning on going home tonight? Exactly. And none of that's going to get paid for. So, like I say, planning in the shoot will lessen the pressures in sound post, but sound post is definitely not getting anywhere near the amount of funding resources in time and in actual resources for people. So,
you got any more clips that we could have a look at? Anything
actually,
else?
just breaking that scene down in terms of sound, actually, I just wanted to say that, in noisy environments, don't expect a good sound, and don't assume that you can actually record good sound in all environments, actually. There are people who just assume that you can just do sound in noisy environments and get a good result, but you can't. You can't always record good dialogue in every situation. In terms of the clothing, synthetic clothing can be an absolute nightmare. The rustle. I mean, last year I had to record Pauline Hanson wearing a tight synthetic dress.
oh my God!
No, it gets worse. A rough bra under that, and then a seatbelt across that. So I wasn't expecting to get good sound in that situation. So certain clothing is going to create a nightmare for you.
There goes your Academy Award.
Yeah, and in terms of the dialogue, between the two guys, the boom should be in there. There should be a boom covering that and getting in as close as possible to get that audio. And obviously that wasn't happening. So, so those, just breaking that scene down a bit. I just wanted to sort of, look at those different three elements, because three different problems there. Really bad noise. really bad clothing and, you know, not getting the mic into the right spot, you know. So it's important to try and, you know, plan for that and work with that, yeah, in the best way, yeah. Say what?
No, we won't say anything about that.
Oh, no, yeah.
Got any more examples of anything you could show?
Oh, yeah. I suppose I've been not
So
really
I'm
paying
just
attention
conscious
to these notes at all.
Probably got about 5 minutes on your time. I know
okay.
we've realised that David's actually got a full day's workshop of stuff that
sorry.
we could do, but that'll have to
Intended
be another
blabber
time.
We could play the two number 4s just for an example of how difficult it would have been to record this stuff and whether we were successful in using it. So DW4, what is it, DNA?
Okay, and so this is an example of, while Alan's queuing it up.
This is an example of, so they're trying to record sound with guys flying, you know, hang gliders with a lawnmower attached to the back.
It's following me.
Yeah,
Plenty of sound there.
That's going to be easy. And, you know, make that drama and usable.
Okay.
I like that they resorted to subtitles in that.
Oh, I know.
Oh, it's astonishing.
What's that, Alan?
Is it the one that begins with the Mac? Papania?
Yes.
Yeah, so
There are two of them, I think.
when in doubt,
we go.
you always
There we are.
subtitle.
That's what the training's for, darling. It's going to be fine, all right? Okay, and here we go. Throw up. Watch out.
Whoa.
I couldn't let you see what happens at the end. But,
So that was you on the back with a... No.
well, you see, so they had GoPros set up there, which so that you know it's a whole journey from Adelaide all the way up to WA. But of course, you know, even in cutting it, if they use the GoPro sound, it's like with the engine, what the engine's doing. So we had to replace that with longer grabs. Not that you're hearing any of that stuff there, but just to try and smooth out the engine. But then, of course, they talk, and when they talk, we can hear the engine, can't we?
Yeah.
So there's a big trade-off between, you know, how much do we sort of gate that sort of the main sound of them talking, which has got engine going, where our other engine's going, so we're hearing, you know, all that sort of stuff. You know, it's a trade-off. And then, of course, intelligibility, I mean, as we know, dialogue is king, so intelligibility right up there. We've got to be able to understand it. So we might be processing it to reduce the sound of the engine, but in processing we might be creating artifacts that make it harder to understand the words or all these sort of issues. So yes, coming back to an earlier point of yours and trying to wrap up, there are a whole pile of you know, various plugins and processes that we can use to significantly reduce constant sounds in particular are the easiest ones to get rid of, you know, like air conditioners and, you know, just constant sounds that are always there in a recording. They're pretty easy to get rid of. Not that I'm encouraging you to go and record like that at all. Winds, hisses, noise, yeah, we can get rid of a lot of that stuff, but it does make people get a bit dalek-y, which, again, depending on the nature of your program, may or may not be appropriate. So to just sort of to cap off, what I'd say, like, forgetting all the other points I'd like to make. So when we come to mixing our show, you know, we've got to keep the whole idea of keeping the audience in the story is paramount, and I always let that direct all of my choices with equalisation, reverb, you know, how quickly we cut from one scene to another, all that sort of stuff. And that's generally the right thing to do, for me to just listen to what the story is. So that's all I do. I just pay attention to the bloody story, and I seem to be successful at it. And you need to be flexible in the mix. Like I said, you don't want to skimp on it. You want to be able to sit there and move narration around 5 frames this way, or a second that way, or extend the music another 5 seconds so that the audience keeps with that previous thought. You know, there are all these sorts of things that really make a massive difference to the storytelling. So don't skimp on mixing and sound. There you go.
All comes down to that. Thank you very much, David.
All right.
I think, you know, the main point that I take away from that is that you, as much as anybody else in the process, are a storyteller, and your contribution adds enormously to that, and without that, a lot of it wouldn't make sense or wouldn't be audible. I like the thing that you had, Ross, on your email. Ross has got this thing that says, when it sounds good, it looks better. I think that's great. So on to sounding good. Our next segment, I realised we had to cut that very short, but it was a great intro to some of the back-end issues and some of the work that goes into solving those problems. So now I'd like to introduce Philip Myers and Leo Sullivan, just by way of a quick intro. Some of you will have known them by reputation, but Philip has worked in sound in the industry for almost 18 years. Well, that's what it said here. I don't know, how old is this? He spent the first 6 years as a sound editor and mixer with Mike Gissing at Digital City Studios, which is where we first met. Yeah. In that dark hole in William Street. Yeah. So many credits. I could spend 5 minutes reading the credits, but Philip has also lectured in sound. He's produced and directed. He's operated second camera, and it says he's even frequently asked to take location stills on film shoots. At least you don't have to worry about the sound in that department. And Philip has been acknowledged by the Australian Screen Sound Guild for his sound work. What was that? Sound work, yes. Leo, most of you will know, Leo has worked in the industry for a bit more than 18 years, isn't it, Leo? Yeah.
Who's counting?
Who's counting, yes. Leo's been an editor, director, producer, sound mixer, camera operator and an educator, but he's most famous for his work as a location sound recordist. So many credits, but some of the recent ones have been Gillian Armstrong's cinema documentary, Women He's Undressed, Howard on Menzies.
Ben Osmo did the drama.
Okay, right. And Leo works across drama and documentary. So these two gentlemen have got a lot to say and a lot to contribute, probably a lot to whinge about too, but let's not have a whinging session. Let's try and keep it more, more on the practical advice side of things.
Yeah, well, we'll try not to whinge too much tonight, yes.
We were discussing before about what the collective noun for sound recordist is, and Leo thinks it's a whine of sound recordist, or possibly a whinge, but he prefers whine because it has a double meaning.
Yes, you could actually say that it could be a frustrating career, but actually it's actually incredibly rewarding meeting real people and going to the places that we do and working with amazing crews. So it's actually quite a privilege. Yeah, so
absolutely.
I won't be complaining tonight. Actually, I do apologise because actually I'm not great at public speaking, so I'm actually going to read a lot. Made a few notes, do a bit of brain dump, and yes, I do apologise for reading rather than sort of ad-libbing. But I actually would like to start with that quote that you actually mentioned earlier about when you receive an email from Ross. At the bottom of it, it will say, "When it sounds good, it looks better." In many ways, there's no truer dictum than this. It's true when you have good sound, your images look better. And when you have bad or poor sound, your images, no matter how well shot, are most likely to be diminished. But just as important as this is the audience relationship, and particularly the emotional relationship to your film that is going to be proportional to the quality of the sound. Good sound will ensure the audience connects with your narrative, and this is obviously fundamental to you. There's no use making the film if you're going to have a poor or weakened relationship with your audience. So you obviously need to get the sound right. And you have to do this on two levels. As David's already mentioned, you need to record the sound well, and you need to have the sound edited and mixed well. If the sound is recorded well and the post-production sound is done well on your film, then your film is obviously going to come to life. In terms of the sound that needs to be recorded, you have two options. Get it as good as you can yourself, or employ the experience of a good sound recordist. And if you do it yourself, you'll need the right technology to do it well, and also some of the same expertise as a sound recordist. A few years ago, I remember being asked by somebody, do filmmakers still use sound recordists? With the expectation that with new technologies, that will be some sort of form of automation. I advised the person asking that sound recordists are now being used more than ever. And there's two main reasons for that. It's actually an incredibly hard job, and actually most productions realize that sound is incredibly important.
And it's getting more difficult too.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah.
I'm going to talk about this later on, but multi-track recording, things like it's now common for Philip and I to have 5 or 6 people on radio mics, and just physically fitting the radio mics on them is time-consuming. So this whole discussion we were talking about before of, in the example of Struggle Street, doing observational documentary, you put radio mics on them and then you've got to take them off those and put them on the others. So the whole OzDox style of shooting is compromised by having to mic everybody. On the other hand, the positive of that is when you do mic everybody, of course, then you can do a lot more, and I'll show you a little clip of that later on. But, yeah.
So if you're lucky enough to have funding and a budget, it would be wise to work out and prioritise when you need a sound recordist, and hopefully you might be able to use one all the time, but maybe you won't. As a suggestion, as the same suggestion as David, you could actually employ a sound recordist for the first few days of your shoot. And then they would be able to help you familiarise with the equipment and give you tips on how to use the equipment and necessary guidance. I highly recommend that if you can, at least afford it in the first couple of days, especially if you've never actually done it yourself before, or get some sort of formal training as well, like David mentioned earlier. So why use a sound recordist? A sound recordist allows you to get the best audio and give you the opportunity of telling your story in the best way. As I previously said, good audio engages the audience. Getting good sound is not easy even for a sound recordist. I recently did an 8 radio microphone job on the SBS series First Contact 2, and the amount of preparation for that was substantial. And despite my experience, it was still very stressful. So good sound sometimes requires a lot of experience and shouldn't be undertaken lightly. So sound recordists are problem solvers within their own expertise. Sound recordists know how to work in noisy environments, but just as important, they also know when to advise when an environment is too noisy and unworkable. Too much noise is an example of problematic sound. Sound recordists know how to swing a boom, which is an incredibly important skill. They know how to direct the microphone to the story, which is something you can't do if you are shooting your own film. Sound recordists can and should record all your audio tracks separately, so you do not lock in noise or other issues, and you give the post-production sound of your film the most flexibility. Sound recordists know how to place a radio mic on someone and understand every situation where a placement may vary. For example, different types of clothing require different approaches to how a microphone is mounted, so there's not always one solution for mounting a microphone. Sound recordists can pre-anticipate problems, such as radio mic interference and battery life of equipment, for example. Sound recordists will make sure that the camera is set up in the optimum way for audio and know how to record double system if necessary and wirelessly link to the camera if that's also necessary. Sound recordists understand the choreography, as David mentioned. It is a dance. It's a dance between you and the camera. They know how to keep the microphone out of shot and how to keep physically out of shot and how to move with the camera when necessary. A good experienced sound recordist develops a natural intuition for this. A good sound recordist can be a vital second creative by helping you with your narrative through advice, a personal response, a second opinion, filmmaking expertise, and most fundamentally by pre-anticipating off-camera action and sometimes alerting you to that off-camera action. So this is quite fundamental, actually. So your sound recordist can be your peripheral vision as well. It is very hard to be a lone filmmaker, and I would suggest always having a second creative on set, and ideally a sound recordist.
The other thing that the sound recordist does is they talk to and entertain the talent. Quite often the producer or director is working with the camera to set something up, or they don't want to talk to them because they're going to tell their story before they get there. So old Soundo goes off into the corner and chats away and all that sort of thing.
We're the social workers of the film.
Absolutely. And that was where way back somebody learnt that Paul Keating actually had pigs. He had a pig farm.
Is that right?
It was the Soundo on a doco who came and did you know?
And we actually, that's true actually, we actually are the mediators and the confidants a lot of the time. and actually we hear everything as well, so we get all the gossip too.
and it stays the same right through post-production.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing what you hear, that's right. As an example of how a sound recordist can be your peripheral vision, a good example, I should say, of a sound recordist being your peripheral vision would be in observational documentary, where you could have what I call off-camera story, i.e. something could be happening away from the camera, and if you're filming something else but listening with headphones, then you may be able to hear additional audio that a sound recordist is sending you, and therefore you can pre-anticipate moving the camera to that new narrative. You may then want to respond by turning the camera to film the audio, to film what has been sent to you in audio. If you're planning to do the sound yourself as a filmmaker, here are some considerations. It is fundamental to use headphones at all times. I cannot overstress this. You need to be aware of what you're recording and whether the quality is good enough. Listening to the audio will help you solve problems as and when they arise, or improve how you're recording the audio if you need to. You should buy or rent good sound equipment. It would not only give you a better result, but also last longer. Cheap sound equipment is a false economy. Use both radio mics and shotgun mics at the same time, when you can, as they will give you differing results and give post-production the options they need. For example, if you're doing a single-person interview, don't just put a radio mic on them. Also put a shotgun mic on a stand and put that close to them as well, giving you a second option, because radio mics have the advantage of proximity, but they also have the disadvantage of quality, prone to other issues such as clothing rustle and radio interference. You need to understand that you can record audio to a camera or to a separate recording device, or both at the same time. And if the audio is recorded separate to the camera, you need to understand how at a later period you'll be able to marry the audio to the picture by either a sync timecode reference, a clapper or a slate, or by using editing software or syncing software such as Pluralize in the Edit Suite. But for that, you must make sure you have a reference track on the camera. It is important to understand that most cameras only record 2 tracks of audio, which can be very limiting. Also, a lot of smaller cameras, such as DSLRs, are only good for recording guide audio, as they have high noise floors or unbalanced inputs, in which case you can definitely have to use an external recorder. Ross will advise you on the numerous options for multi-track recording or getting better audio to your DSLR. You need to know how to set up the audio on the camera properly so the audio isn't too low, and also so the audio isn't too high and creates peaks or digital distortion. One of the greatest problems, as mentioned by David, is wind noise. So you have to make sure that your microphones are protected from wind. Mix and match your sound equipment to get the best results. Just because you've bought a Sony radio mic doesn't mean you have to use Sony lapel mics to go with them. You know, there are lots of other options, as Ross will tell you. Try and have a good shotgun mic on top of your camera with good suspension. This will provide a good sound source and reduce some of the reverberation on the mic. Don't lock in noise by mixing more than one microphone down to a track. There is no longer a reason to do this unless it is just as a reference track for your camera. Sorry for my waffling, but I wanted to sort of be succinct about what I wanted to say. So hopefully that gives you a few pointers in either doing it yourself or hiring one of us. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Philip. Just a note to our streaming audience out there, I forgot to mention, if you'd like to Twitter, it's hashtag OzDox, OZDOX. Please send us in some Twitters, and I'm sitting here with my little Twitter screen and feeling like a real professional, waiting for the tweets to come in. Or if you're in the audience and you've got a question, you can do that. We'll see if the thing actually works. Sometimes it does. Alan, could I? There's a photograph of Leo. I think it's called Leo Polaxed, and I just wanted to put that up to.
Oh, that was the one we took out, Alan, but I think it's still in there.
I hope you didn't take it out. Censorship. I just wanted to show Leo's versatility. Now that's what I call
to be a sound recordist. You have to use your head.
That was taken on location, and you know, Leo could stand there for hours and just have his hands in his pockets and still be working. So that's how good he is, folks, using his head. Over to you, Leo.
Thank you. Now, I just noticed that my title is Location Sound Recordist. So I thought I'd briefly talk about choosing locations, because we talked about choosing the right areas. Alan, can you get that, the clip number 2, Exterior Warehouse? This is a program I did in February for Catalyst, and I arrived 2 days before the shoot began into an empty warehouse that had so much reverberation I couldn't hear the director, who was 2 metres away. I couldn't hear what they were saying. The sound was bouncing all over the walls. Is that ready, Alan? Yep. Just let that roll and we'll continue. This is a shot of the exterior of the warehouse. Location survey that produced this. So this is it. Isn't it great? You know, it's fantastic. Oh, are you kidding me? And I said, we can't shoot here. We can't. It could be a nightmare. Oh, well, it's booked, and we start in 3 days. So maybe, Alan, if you could go to the stills photographs. I had a very good set designer who helped me out, and we went to Vinnie's and we bought mattresses and blankets, and I brought all my 8 carpets from home and we fitted them all out. Can you just flip through the stills so people can see what we did? And in the end, it was usable, but you know, the hours that were spent, again, saving money, which would probably then been used up in the post. And
so that's an example of what David was saying about the planning and everyone thinking about the picture and not the sound.
I mean, my saying is we're trying to record studio quality sound in a noisy world, and everybody knows how noisy the world is. So just, again, a bit more planning. There's some really basic things that people don't do. Is step away from the microphone.
What are we looking at?
So, well, there are all the carpets, because the door that between us and the busy road was a roller door. You know, great soundproofing. So we had just flipped through them quickly.
So you got mattresses up against the roller door.
Yeah.
And what percentage
We're getting bad
would that
sound
drop
now,
down?
by the way.
Say again? Yeah.
The sound is...
Yeah, no, it sounds terrible, yeah. Yeah, I know.
Are we... Alan, is
I've backed off
there
a bit
anything
from
we
it.
can do?
Oh, yours, maybe yours.
Yeah, maybe it's... I don't know if it's mine.
Right.
Okay. Is it me?
Anyway, there's a whole lot of stills that of just what we did and moving. We had to then keep moving carpets around because you didn't want them in shot. But anyway, we got there. But
There's another...
yeah, so you get the gist. Yeah. So, Alan, we might move on to clip number 5, background noise. And I'll give you an example of how it worked. You know, physically trying to shoot between the aeroplane. You know, we had flight, what's it called, flight tracker app, so we could tell when the planes were coming. You get these 2-minute windows, and you're doing pieces to camera. So sometimes we do 5 pieces to camera before you'd complete one. You know.
Yeah, don't wreck your location on a Sunday and then shoot on a Monday.
Yeah,
because everything changes.
That's right. Do you want to just let that rip? So just listen to the background in this.
And we have all the time in the world to do this. So
Okay.
just relax. And if you just want to stop talking and start again,
Okay.
you can take that. You don't have to do it all at once.
Okay.
Okay. Alrighty, so just start by telling me what the actual issue is, what the problem is to be solved.
Okay. So the problem is fitting these EOG sensors into a casing that's going to fit around Riley's head. We need one of the sensors to be up near his temple and the other sensor to be down at the back of his ear. So this is the casing that I've designed. It's going to have the sensors here and down here.
Can you show me those actions again, please?
Yep.
And remember what I said about bringing
yes.
your finger in more from the side?
Yep.
Okay.
So these sensors will fit up the top here and down the bottom.
Perfect.
So this is the back where the sensors will fit inside.
Would you rather do that without the plane? I think so.
It would be better.
Yeah,
Can
maybe.
you just hold the plane, please?
Smart ass.
Plenty of sound there. I don't know what
Yeah.
you're complaining about.
Anyway, I mean, as a producer or a filmmaker, that's costing you time. And it's not just about me. It was very stressful because you're constantly listening. When's the next plane going to go? But it's just you can actually. I subsequently did a shoot very similar about 2 months later, and I just said very clear to the producer, if you get me somewhere like that, I'm not doing it. And they found me a really good location, and everything went smoothly. So it's very simple. Simple things people forget. If you're in a house doing an interview, simply shut the windows, shut the doors. People don't think of that. Turn the fridge off. People don't actually think about the sound in the environment until you put the headphones on. So important. Once you put that...
Beginning students?
Pardon?
They're beginning students or what?
No, that's everybody. Everybody. It's like how many times I've heard that comment that you said, there were no jackhammers here yesterday when I came. It's like people don't think. When they go to a location, they look at it. They don't listen. So that's something you should... It's an audio-visual medium. So when you go to do a shot somewhere, just think of it and listen to the sound of it first before you start. It's so important, and it make his life a lot easier and yours a lot easier as well. Now, on a positive note, I wanted to talk a bit more about this. This is an area that's new to me. So technology is changing so much, and I've only just started getting into this multi-track recorders. I'm a late developer, but the multi-track recording is fantastic. It's a great improvement. That's what Philip was talking about. The more track can record on, the easier it is to keep all your tracks separate. So in the mix, you've got stuff to play with instead of what you would have done in the past is mix everybody's mic down to one, and so if you miss a little bit or something, you've lost it. So multi-tracking is very good to get into. And Alan, if we can have a look at number 4, montage. We might cut it about halfway through too, it's a bit but I'll just give you an idea of what you can do with multi-tracking, why it is a very good thing. If you're able to get everybody mic'd up, let it go, Alan. If you're able to get everybody mic'd up, you can do lots of things that you wouldn't have thought possible.
Apparently, this is what Ellie reckons.
They do.
Oh my
Before
God.
you say anything, they do.
Jesus.
Bad people. Bad people.
I think that's a man job, but sure.
No, we can do it.
Break the gender stereotypes.
Yes.
It's been...
Woman power.
Are you going to pay for my hernia?
Equality for men and women. What was that? There's like a caveman display.
That's it, that's all I could do, just like throw this around for a bit. Okay.
TV?
Now, pretty sure we're going to be...
Are you plugging it in? Are you plugging
What do you have?
And if you were working by yourself with a camera mic, you'd
You'd
just
get
have
what
that
you heard
sound
in
that
the
you heard in the
beginning,
beginning, which is virtually useless.
Yeah, and sometimes people say, well, that's just a montage, but I've always found montages often give you really rich sound because people think, oh, this is not on camera, and so you get quite good audio on montage, and it actually, again, adds to the story. Little bits of dialogue come up, so you know, I think multi-tracking is a great thing. You don't have to, it's helpful to have a sound recordist to do it, obviously, but there are other ways to do multi-tracking. We talked about before, all the different devices. You've got 2 channels on your camera. You can get a Zoom separate recorder that's got up to 4 channels in it. So there's lots of other ways you can make use of multi-channel recording, which can really improve your options in the mix.
So Leo, are you mixing these
days?
days?
Yeah, I meant to talk about that, yes.
So are you mixing while you're on location, or are you just saying, well, they're all separate tracks, I'm just going to let them all run and they can work it out?
Very good question,
later.
thank you. One of the reasons I was a bit of a slow developer is I liked the location mixing, because it's the challenge of the game, really. But when you've got 6 people, it became impossible. It's out of control. So what I provide to the camera now, mostly, it varies a little bit, but mostly you're providing a rough mono mix, which is all the channels blended together, which is what you saw there. They're all just roughly mixed together, and that's just a guide track. But on my recorder, all those 6 people, or in that case I think 5 people, all have their own separate channel, which all ends up on David's Pro Tool timeline, and he can do the mix properly in all the leisure time that he has to work on it. So in that example,
he's speechless.
That's right. Well, that was one of the reasons why I like to do the mix myself. I used to like to present a mix to David so that he didn't have to do anything, but now it's got too hard. Well, actually, that's not quite true. I think Mike Gissing said if I presented him a good mix track, then he could spend time finessing it and making the track really nice, being creative, doing all the wonderful creative things post-production sound people can do. But if they've spent their 10 hours just fixing stuff, they've got no time to sort of do that fantastic creative work that they can do, which I know they can do, yeah.
And sometimes it's impossible to live mix as well, isn't it? It's like
it's just getting, once you've got 6. I'll just point out I was doing a rough mix on that as I went, sort of trying to guess who was in the frame just to keep my practice up. And but when you've got all 6 channels together, you've got to keep them all open a little bit in case somebody quickly jumps in. So there's a lot more noise in that, a lot more background noise in that mono mix than you would want. So in post-production, you'd separate them out completely.
Must be a lot of extra time that you have to spend. I mean, miking up 6 people or 8 people, as you were saying, Philip, and then troubleshooting. I mean, I've worked with Leo lots of times, and you know, it's great when you can have someone who's just listening and saying, we just got to stop because it's picking up a bit of rustle on somebody's shirt or something. When you've got 6 or 8 people, presumably you've got to stop the shoot and go through all 6 microphones and work out whose shirt's the troublemaker.
Well, sometimes you can't stop the shoot, so that means you also, not only do you have all those radio mics going, but you also have to have the boom ready as well. Because if you get a problem on one of those mics, rustle or interference, then you also have to get the boom in there as well. So you've got 8 radio mics going and a boom. So your boom's always your backup.
How many hands have you got?
Well, luckily a lot of those you can keep all those recording, which is luckily, so that you don't have to keep mixing them. You can keep them, get them about right, keep them recording, and then if you need to get the boom in there, then you can. And that's obviously why you need a long enough boom in some situations as well. But yes, you need. I mean, it takes you half a day to prepare 8 radio mics to make sure they all work together, you know, that there's no cross interference or cross issues, and then, you know, probably can take you up to half an hour just to put them on people and just test them and make sure it's all going before you then actually do a live shoot. It can be quite tricky.
And there's the old saying, waiting on sound still applies.
Yeah, and everyone's pushing you.
Just waiting on sound.
And you've got the producer or the director pushing you all the time. It's like, well, I've got to get it right. So
the other issue with those 8 radio mics, as you said, about getting all the right frequencies so they don't interfere with each other. You prep it in Sydney, you get on a plane, you fly to Cairns, you've got to start again. That's right. Because of the way the TV spectrum's been squashed, you've got to start reprogramming all 8 when you get to where you're going to use it. That's another half hour.
Sorry,
or
you're
more.
talking about finding a frequency
that works, that works in the territory you're in, and that you're not interfering with each of the 8 radio mics, and that takes time.
Yeah, well, you can turn up on a news situation, and there's 5 other camera people who all got radio mics on, happen to be on your frequency, which is really annoying.
That's right. But there's actually a great app you can get called Frequency Finder, and it actually can tell you what frequencies are going to work together and what.
I was looking for that yesterday.
Yeah, it
says we're not
tells you what?
It's Frequency Finder, yeah, and it's about $35, and it's probably one of the most important tools these days, because if you're running a lot of radio mics, you want to make sure that they have the least amount of problems, because you could still have problems even if you use this app. But at least it reduces problems and can tell you what frequencies will work with other frequencies and what won't. Yeah, because you do get modulation problems, which is like, the frequencies are actually sort of cancelling each other out, even in radio frequencies. So you want to avoid that as much as you can, and then and minimise those problems before you then start resolving all the other problems like clothing rust or whatever, or environmental radio frequencies. Yeah.
So that app tells you what frequencies are available in this environment.
No, what you do is you type in the frequency of one radio mic, and then you put in the frequency of the next radio mic, and it will tell you whether that's compatible or not. There won't be any modulation issues, yeah. No. And what it will do is then recommend all the other frequencies that will actually work with that first frequency, and then you just start choosing from that table. Fantastic. And then you keep going so that there's no modulation issues with across the board, yeah. Which is the most important basis, really, because you want to get things working as much as you can, because there's always other problems to resolve as well. So yeah, it's a great app, yeah, Frequency Finder, yeah.
Leo, any more? Well, I know there's lots more, but
well, we've got
a few minutes.
Got a little bit of time. One of the things that Rod and I talked before about was, you can have a person who may not be very experienced on a boom, but have someone with you. I really recommend having 2 people on the crew, even if it's someone to put money in the meter. But to shoot on your own, it's really hard. But one of the tools that Ross might talk about is you can get a radio transmitter on your boom. And if we could have Alan have a look at the boom clip, if you've got a radio transmitted boom, then the person who's helping you, even if they're not experienced, they're not tethered to the camera. So it gives them freedom to move around. We have a look at that.
As you can see pink's my colour. Brings out my shapes. And Mary.
I have never seen anything like that. That was something else. Have you been to Boom Operator School?
Need some help.
So that's got a little thing which fits on the back of the microphone, and I've had a couple of those in my kit, used them over the years, and it's great because you used to have a cable tethered to the recording outfit or the camera, and so you can wander around and just be free of that. But the question for you is, which something I never worked out, is that if you're doing that, how do you actually hear what's going on? Philip's point about you must be hearing what's going through the microphone.
Well, you're relying on your camera person to do. They'll be having their headphones on. Whoever's on the camera would do that.
Well, that's the best I ever got to say. Point that way, point that. If I was on camera, or if I was doing just hoping I was getting good sound.
About the transmitter back to you.
And this is the Zaxcom butt plug, and you can listen to it. Yeah. Independently of what's going to the camera, but I'll show you.
So you can put headphones into the transmitter.
No, wirelessly. I'll show you that in a minute.
Okay, so that's Ross's
new technology.
New toys section. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, just keeping up our time pressures, we'll keep going. Thanks very much. Can you all please thank Leo? Now, Ross Boyer, representing LEMAC today, but Ross has been a sound recordist for 40 years. That's about as long as Leo, isn't it? Recording TV drama, documentaries and feature films. He started in the film era, some of us remember that, and has experienced the technological revolution that has occurred and keeps going. He's also taught sound acquisition at TAFE, AFTRS and Hong Kong Academy for Performing Arts. And for the last 7 years, those of you who've dropped into LEMAC will know that he's been the sound professional at the LEMAC Sydney store. And really appreciate you coming along tonight. As you can see, there's Ross has brought a lot of baggage with him, and he's going to tell us about some of that. I don't mean just your days as a sound recordist.
One of the most frustrating things was probably many years ago at AFTRS teaching David. I taught him. Not everything he knows. Where to start? Probably the microphones. As you can see with the camera mics, they've all got wind protection. If you don't have wind protection, you're up against it, even the DSLR. That's one of the big bugbears, and there's no excuse not to have wind protection at the source of recording. Even if you're doing it on a portable recorder, get yourself a suspension mount and a wind protection. Now you're not going to hear any handling noise while you're trying to record some Atmoses or whatever. There are several microphones available these days, and they're all short microphones, simply because with these new cameras, the longer mics, the 416 length, by the time you put wind protection on them, they all end up in the top of the wide shot. So these are the small mics. This is a Sony ECM VG1. Best value, it's $330 I think today. It comes with a fluffy windsock, comes with a cable, and comes with the Sony rubber mount to lock it on to this. Normally you'd pay, if you bought a cheap Rode, you'd be paying $300 for the mic, $50 for the cable, $100 and something for this. So that's what we recommend these days. Also, Audio-Technica have a really good short shotgun mic. And again, Rycode have got a good suspension mount. You need suspension. Don't just lock it straight in. A lot of people just use a clamp and screw it onto the camera. Every time they touch the camera, you're hearing that noise. And the Rolls-Royce is a DPA. Now that's nearly $2,000, but it's a nice short microphone, and that's going to give you the best camera mic sound. If the camera mic is applicable. If you want sound grabs from a camera, don't be any more than a metre away from the person talking. Then you've got usable dialogue. You get 2 metres away, you start to hear the room and all the background noise. If you wanted to put this mic onto a boom, you can take the small preamp off and put on, amongst all of this somewhere, is a longer preamp with filters on it. So that gets onto your boom.
Ross, just go a bit slower into the camera.
Sorry, forgot all about you.
Yeah, I was just going to remind you, if you look behind you, you'll see that it's being projected on the screen. So if you can hold that reasonably steady, and we're also streaming that, so the audience out there seeing it too.
And this was the short, compact mic preamp, which of course you'd use on the camera. So using a boom mic, I'd suggest, if you can't afford a boom operator or a sound recordist, there we go. There's a microphone on a boom, on a stand, cheap boom operator for you. Or, this is a very light, very small, little boom pole.
Does it do fly fishing as well?
Now, I perhaps don't want it that long, so I'll just pull it apart, and I've got a shorter mic pole. It comes in 3 sections. So what's the mic on it? It's a little Rode micro mic. It's a 3.5mm for the DSLR market, but with their VXLR adapter, you can phantom power them from most phantom power sources. Works on 90% of the cameras. And it comes with a fluffy. Most importantly, it comes with a fluffy. So that's good if you've got to do it yourself. You can hang that over somebody while you're shooting. The other microphones, I'll just grab this one down from here. This is an Audio-Technica shotgun mic. It is an MS stereo shotgun mic. So you can have it in mono and just use it as your normal shotgun. Flick the switch to MS if you want to record MS stereo on location, or you can have narrow XY or wide XY coming out of it. So before this was available, I had a Sanken CS5 20 years ago that I took around the world on a series, and it was great. I did all my interviews in mono, then I could just do a stereo ambience by a flick of the switch. And I was lucky enough to do the post on that project. Then if you want a range of microphones, the AKG Blue Line series is probably the best. There's your preamp. That capsule is the hypercardioid. Then they have a cardioid capsule, and they have the shotgun capsule. So you would just change these as necessary, whether you're booming or miking something up. If you've got a group of 3 or 4 people, you'd get rid of that and use the hypercardioid capsule to make life easier. And in windsocks or wind shields, this is the new Rycote Cyclone. It just clips on magnetically. So it's easy to get on, easy to get off. Cyclone. It's got the same good suspension in it, and it's available in 3 lengths. And the windjammer for it is separate. So that's probably your main XLR type of microphones that you would use in cameras like these that accept them, or a mixer recorder like this that accepts XLR inputs. And also the Zoom H6, it will take 6 mics, but the beauty of 4 mics normally. The beauty of it is you can buy an XLR adapter, take the microphone off the top, put this on, and you've got 6 XLR inputs. So those that have to do multi-tracking on their own, you can get 6 professional connected microphones into this recorder. Now, how are you going to monitor all that? Learn to listen. That's the most important thing. That's what they are all saying, is you've got to wear the headphones. No point in wearing the headphones if you're not able to listen actively. The one other thing that is just new from Rycote, normally these basket windshields with a windjammer are about $1,200, $900 street price. This is a new one that they've come out with. With a windjammer, it's going to be about 650. So we're expecting the first delivery of those in the next 2-3 weeks to a month. Wireless mics, perhaps. You're all familiar with the Sony system, lavalier mic and receiver. Now the receiver can plug onto the camera, and if you use the Sony system, the FS7, the FS5, and a couple of others, it has an active hot shoe. So you can take it off, and you could probably see underneath there little pins, and that's what goes into that. So using this mount, that's what powers the wireless mic receiver and sends the reception sound into the camera. Now, this is a single track receiver. I did have, until about 2 or 3 days ago, a 2 transmitter receiver, a dual channel receiver. It has one more output on it. It unfortunately went back to Japan to be reprogrammed. They're coming in August. So those that have existing wireless systems like this can then buy a dual channel receiver, so you can have 2 lavalier mics going into the one on your camera. So you don't have to have 2 receivers on your camera. And a lot of people have these already. So it's just a matter of buying the receiver.
Can you then still use an onboard shotgun with that? Like
Yes, yeah. Depending on the camera. Some cameras it'll go to track 3 and 4. Yeah. Other cameras only have 2 tracks, so then you'd be using up the 2 tracks. Sony also have a butt plug transmitter. The beauty of this, it provides phantom power to the microphone.
Sorry, is this like the remote boom thing we saw before?
Yes, yes. So this butt plug will work with this receiver, and of course if you have the dual channel receiver, you'll be able to receive a butt plug and a lavalier.
Sounds a bit wrong.
Now,
Receive it, button.
Well, it's been called a butt plug for 40 years that I know of.
Maybe for the benefits of those down there, could you just explain what a butt plug is?
That is a female plug.
That's right.
And I just want to say this is going out on YouTube, so keep it quiet.
Oh, they'll work it out. Now, Sennheiser have a new system. All of these wireless mics are in the television bandwidth. So wherever you go, you're going to run into issues with you're sharing the spectrum with television stations. And you will get to some areas of Australia, particularly southeast Queensland, where they've used up all the spectrum. And it's really hard to find wireless mic frequencies. This new system, the AVX system from Sennheiser, it operates 1900 megs. It's a dedicated wireless mic frequency channel of 10 megs, and you're away from television. There's no one up there except wireless mic operators, but only these systems. So that's your transmitter, the normal body pack transmitter, and that's your receiver. So that's nice and small. Plug that into your camera. Which is the best camera there. It would be handy if I could see what I'm doing here, okay? So you plug that into the camera and it doesn't matter. You can rotate it around so it's not getting in the way. A lot of cameras have 2 XLRs here. You could plug it into this one and just get it out of the way, however you like. So it's also very clever because this receiver talks to the transmitter and it says, I'm getting interference, go to a new frequency. So if you do get interference, which is less likely because you're not in the television bandwidth, it'll tell the transmitter to change frequency. Also, you don't have to worry about the level on the transmitter. You just plug it on and turn it on to somebody and go, oh, okay, that'll do, that's fine. Because it looks after the level for you. Now, a lot of auto level previously was just awful. You could hear it suck and pump and all that sort of stuff. This one is fairly transparent. It really does work a treat. And as somebody said before, you don't have to accept the microphone that comes with it because most of these cheaper systems come with a cheap mic. You can change the microphones that you use.
What's that called again?
This is the Sennheiser AVX wireless mic system. So there is a new DPA microphone that has a little bump on it. Now that's the buttonhole attachment. You would put it through your buttonhole. I'll do it up. There it is. So assuming the cable's running inside and it's all buried underneath, but that little thing that's poking through is the microphone and you'd never see it. And you can take that off and it's a standard flat type of lav mic. You're probably all aware of the Sanken microphones. They're long, thin, like a matchstick.
Ross, what's that last one called?
That was a DPA Slim microphone.
Can you use that with any transmitter, or do you need a...
No, you just wire it up to the applicable transmitter. Now, I'll put this against the white background, but that's the smallest mic head around at the moment. That's the Countryman B6. So, again, they can poke through your buttonhole, you'll never see it.
That's a second?
That's a Countryman B6. Then there's another form of lav mic that you've probably not seen that I'm wearing yet. It's the pin mic. This is stuck through my shirt onto the pins at the back. So you can get a silver one and you can colour it all different colours, put it on somebody's dress and you just wouldn't see it. You're not doing drama, you're doing doco, so it's acceptable that if somebody knows what it is and goes, oh, that's one, but it's not drama. So, and it's a nice, crisp, clear sound, and it's not getting clothing noise on it from what I'm wearing around it.
What brand?
Rode pin mic.
And does it have some wind protection?
It does. It comes with a fluffy you can put on it, but then obviously it looks big.
How big's the fluffy?
It's big. Interestingly, the person that actually invented the pin mic is another sound recordist called Rick Creaser.
So that's based on Rick's design?
Yes, yeah, Rick sold it to Rode. And Rick is working in our Melbourne office. Now, on wireless systems, This is the new Sennheiser receiver. This is a prototype. It'll be out later in the year. It receives 2 wireless mic transmitters. The good thing is you don't have to buy any transmitters with this. You've all got the G3 series. It'll receive those. Do you have the 5212, whatever it is, the broadcast transmitters that everybody uses, or even the 9000 digital series, it will receive. All you do, you bring your transmitter, put it near it, they talk to each other, and it says, okay, I've got you, you're on channel 1, I'll receive you on channel 1. Then you bring in the digital 9000 series, that's an analog, this is a digital, they talk to each other. And so you've got digital on one side, analog on the other side, 2 different systems totally. So it is a camera slot in. You can take this case off it and it will then slot in. But if you want to connect it into your bag, it's got the connectors on the back for that. So that's about $6,500 and it's coming later in the year. Now, finally, this is the Zaxcom transmitters. These transmitters are the only ones that will record before they transmit, and it's timecode stamped. So in here, is a micro SD card.
So the obvious advantage for us is if you get out of range, they keep recording.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a TV series first series has been shot, second one is doing it, where they're going by air ambulance to places. There's not enough room for everybody. So they're on the ground at the airport. The guys are wearing these. They jump into the helicopter or whatever with a cameraman and they go to the other end and scrape up whatever the disaster was that they've got to collect. And this is still recording, all time stamped from either a Nomad, which is a Zaxcom mixer, or you can get a cable and just take it out of a locket box or whatever. As long as you timestamp every device, they're all on the same time. So when you get back into post, all of these different things, including a GoPro, we can do that to GoPros these days, they are all timestamped with exactly the same frame, so it should all sync up. The other advantage of these is if you're doing particularly drama where the actors don't want you to be recording them all the time, because you can put this on, turn it on and it goes into record. Or if you don't want to do that, you can send your Nomad into record and you'll see that the transmitter goes into record. Did that work?
Just all the time.
While we're just waiting there, I'll just, this is very exciting. I've actually got some tweets that have come in. I thought I might have to make some up. Here's an interesting one. Jen Leon Forte says, loving the program. My question is, how do you get crew who are unsympathetic to sound to listen to you when there are issues? That's I'm not sure we can deal with it on this panel.
I can guarantee that's a question that doesn't have an answer. It's impossible.
Well, thanks very much, Jen, for your tweet. We'll get back to you on that.
I will say, seriously though, one of the great things about working in documentary is you generally do find sympathetic crews. We're working usually, that's one of the things I love about documentary, is you're working as a team, and there is that constant battle between, it's this great shot out here under the gum tree and it's a 90-kilometre gale, it looks fantastic. You just work that out. I mean, it's just, cooperate, it works. Thank you.
Another one says, well, we're kind of answering the question. Says, as a poor uni student wanting to invest long time, what gear would you most highly recommend? What's first, mixer or mics? Well, I think if you're out there, you're getting some of that. It's just a matter of, as a poor uni student, you probably can't afford any of this gear. That's the sad news. But you know, there's always something that you can start off with, and it's a question of what your priorities are.
Most unis that I know have a film unit anyway, so go and visit the film department at the uni.
Another one says, please don't forget to mention checking the sound on video files before sending them places. So that's something that you could probably talk to. That means what? That
I'm not sure.
I think they're talking about post-production there.
Oh, okay.
Once you've done a mix, you send a copy off, get the sound into pictures.
Right.
Sounds like a good idea.
Yes. But sound, do you have time at the end of the day to check your sound before you... There's a lot of work to do after your day's recording these days with all these different sounds and sound files, isn't it?
It's fundamental to make sure that your audio is backed up, absolutely. And I do spot check it to make sure it's all as expected. Luckily, the equipment these days is very robust, so it's very rare to get major problems or, you know, or corrupted files. I've never really had a corrupted file, so I'm quite lucky. Good equipment is quite robust, yeah. So yeah, just back up. There's multiple backup. And even if you give a copy to the production, then keep a copy yourself. And you know, some productions, they come back to you 9 months later, and you know, that's when they do the post, sometimes a lot later, and they've, you know, they've lost some of the audio, and then they expect you to still have it, and you have, and it's a good idea that you have, yeah.
So you have to archive.
Yeah, I archive everything, yeah. So I've always got a copy, yeah. Every program, I keep a copy of all of the audio.
Just on
on hard drive, yeah. Or multiple hard drives, yeah.
You okay now, Ross?
Yep.
Yep. All right, back to Ross, and then we'll move on to some questions very shortly.
The other thing you can do with the ZaxNet system, which is metadata sent to transmitters via 2.4 gig, is you can change the gain of the transmitter. Can you see the gain going up, down?
Yeah, just move your hand so that we can see the knob moving. Yeah.
Yep, can see that.
Yeah. And without redoing it, I can also change the frequency from the mixer. So you don't have to go near the person. If they get too loud or too soft, you can do it, change it from the mixer. You don't have to go near them. If you're getting interference, you can change frequency without going anywhere near them. One person? Oh, I can do 37, I think, different frequencies. So I could program up 30 odd different transmitters, and all I've got to do is tell it which one I want to talk to.
How much does it cost?
That's the size of the multi-channel receiver. It receives 2 transmitters. Pardon me. So 2 transmitters and a receiver, about 10,000 these days with the US dollar the way it is. And that's their plug-on transmitter. Again, it records and provides phantom power. Quickly while I'm here, people that want 9-volt batteries, here's the rechargeable one from iPower. It's now 700 milliamp hours. It used to be 520, so it lasts a lot longer, particularly for people using electrosonics. They all use these. And then there's PowerX, which are the AA batteries for rechargeable. iPower are coming out with some AA rechargeables. We figure they're probably going to be pretty good because these batteries are. They haven't hit Australia yet, then somebody will test them out and we'll know. But they should be here in about 2 months. So they're just a brand new release. And the newest battery on the market now is the new HiQ batteries. They're intelligent batteries that you can read out what's going on inside. This big one is 98 watt hours. It's going to replace the NP1, which has been traditionally the sound kit battery. NP1s are 70 watt hours. These are 98 watt hours, still legal to take them on an aircraft. And it's going to last about a third longer when you run your kit. Plus there's also a small one, half, 48 watt hour. So that's the new lithium-ion technology in batteries. And the last little thing really is this. This is a tentacle sync locket box. It's so small and it's very, very light. So you charge the battery through USB. It'll last a full day on your shoot. Steadicam operators, camera operators just love it. You can program it from your iPhone, your Android or a computer, and that's setting up what you want it to do. Get onto location, then you can get cables like this and jam it from the time code out of here or the time code from sound devices or whatever you want to be the master clock. Jam this up, then you can take this and jam cameras B, C and D. Everybody is on the same time code and there's an output lead for a GoPro. It also has a little built-in microphone so that when you're putting it on DSLRs, you can tell it to do guide audio on one side, time code on the other. And I presume it works for the GoPro, though I haven't plugged one in to do that too. So that's the new time code locket boxes. They're fantastic. Everybody is raving about those.
Is that what they're called?
They're tentacle sync. Tentacle sync.
There's a voice in my ear asking how much.
They're $500 a box and about $900 a pair. Then you've got to buy your camera cables, which are about $90 each. Every camera has a different cable, of course. And second last but not least is an Audio Technica mono stereo mini shotgun mic for the DSLR market. So you can see it's mono or stereo, and it also has filters on it and a pad. So all of that on one of these little microphones. Now, normally I don't show toy microphones, but this one sounds good. It's got a bottom end on it. It sounds like a real microphone. And it comes with a windjammer. Well, you wouldn't buy it if it didn't. One of the other microphones for DSLR is the Shure VP 83F. This records. It hasn't got a battery in it. So in the front, if we take the fluffy off it, it's easier to see. So in the front, you can see there's a little slot for the micro SD card. Right up the top there. So your batteries go in there and a micro SD card goes in there. The beauty of it, it has an output lead, which is 3.5, that goes into your camera. It's recording. The camera's getting the same audio, so it's got a good waveform for pluralize to sync it up, and it's got a headphone outlet on it. There is the output for the camera, and there's a headphone outlet on it, so you can actually hear what's going on.
One of the big issues with DSLRs is you can't use your headphones while you're recording. So
on a lot of them, yes.
You get back to the edit suite and you realise that there's a big hum or something, and you didn't have the opportunity to solve whatever the problem was.
Now the other thing you need if you're going to shoot on DSLR, even if you can get sound into it, the mic preamps in them are crap. So give it a good waveform so that Pluralize or your syncing program can do it easily. But this is the Tascam DR70D. It has 4 XLR inputs and also your outputs, and headphone monitoring and volume control for the 4 inputs, and metering. Oh, it's just taking forever, but. So you could run around with this. It's not too big. Put it on your tripod, shoot your interview. You can hear what's going on. Oh yes, it's also a recorder. So it's recording 4 tracks of audio, and you're sending a guide mix to the camera for syncing purposes. And last but not least, iPhones. This is, again, a little Rode cardioid microphone, which is for this iPhone, and it comes with a fluffy, or you can have the Smart Lav, which is a lavalier mic, which you can pin on somebody, put it into your phone, hit the record button, put it in their pocket, and it's not transmitting, but you are recording. There's another way of doing it. A lot of phones these days have got 4K cameras on them. So people are choosing to use their phone to capture picture and sound. And this is the Sennheiser digital clip mic, which goes into the newer generation, the Lightning connectors. One other thing you might do is use a boundary layer mic, and you could put that on a table, and if there was 1, 2, 3 people sitting around this end of the table, put that in the middle and it'd pick us up very well. So using boundary layer for that sort of thing is a good way of getting out of some situations. And if you can't afford a Zaxcom system, because it is rather expensive, this is a standard old Electrosonics transmitter, and there's the microphone. Instead of going into the electro transmitter, it's going into this Tascam DR10. It records and then sends the signal to the transmitter. So it's a 2-pack on the person, but it's recording before the transmission. No time code stamp, none of that sort of stuff, but hey, what's wrong with a bit of a clap? So that's another way of recording audio before you send it out. And of course, the normal suspects for helping you put on wireless mics: undercovers, overcovers from Rycote. There's some little hush labs that you can stick your microphone in and tape it on. And of course, good old Leukoplast, the medical tape that we use. And I promise, this is the last, Aquapacks. You can get your transmitter in here, then put the mic cable out through here and seal it. So no water will get in, but your mic cable is out. Strap that onto the person while they're doing risky water stuff. You know, it's not meant to go diving, but if you're doing, fly fishermen and all that, they fall into the water. Protect your transmitter with that. And if you're doing home voiceovers, here's a USB adapter. Plug that into your XLR microphone, and it has volume and gain control and headphone control, and that then takes the output into the USB input of your computer. Here endeth the story.
It's Christmas.
There's lots of options. for you to go, well, in this project, I've got to do something. There's more than one way of tackling this now. And apart from the Zaxcom system and a couple of the microphones, they're not that expensive to get you really, really good sound. Wind protection and suspension from handling noise, and learn to listen.
Thank you very much, Ross. So go and see Ross at Lemac. He comes with a lot of fluffies. Not to mention butt plugs, which we won't. Time for some questions from the audience. I just wanted to repeat that if anybody does want to ask a question, please, we need you to come to the microphone, and if you just stand in a queue, and for the next 20 minutes or so, we can take questions from the audience. Andrew, you're first.
Yeah, hi, Andrew Vile. This is a question for David particularly, not especially OzDox, but just the problems and overcoming the problems of voiceovers and post-syncing and stuff like that. So you didn't even mention that area of sound in your talk. I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to get terrific sound without any of those resorting to any of that sort of stuff. But perhaps you could tell us a bit about that, because I've been involved in a bit of that. So has everyone, yeah.
Well, I suppose all I've really got to say with voiceovers is, as far as the viewer's concerned, the voiceover is such a terrific way of imparting information. Now, of course, as filmmakers, we don't want to rely on voiceovers. But often, we need to resort to a voiceover just to make it easy for the audience or whatever, help tell the story. I'm not quite sure whether the question refers to the way the voiceover is done, like whether you record the delivery of that so that well, what I do is I get the delivery of it as appropriate for the program that I'm in. Of course, it's always recorded in a booth. Unless, of course, many of the sort of OzDox style shows are narrated by the camera person or director, and a lot of the narration that they do comes from when they're out in the field. So in those cases, I just recommend that if that's what you're doing, make sure you record it the same way every single time. Same microphone, same location in relation to the mouth, not up here and then there and then here and then there, always in the same spot. Because then you can potentially use stuff recorded like that as a voiceover, but it's got to be recorded consistently. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, and also about post-syncing. Like, did you at any point resort to post-syncing when the sound is just so messy? You say, well, we can do this better in a sound booth.
Well, of course, but budgets in documentaries hardly ever pay for Foley. For example, I worked on a terrific film called Zach's Ceremony at the end of last year, which I'd highly recommend anyone to go and see. That was shot over 6 years, and follows this young Aboriginal kid from the age of 10 to the age of 16, and it's a coming of age story. But pardon me, they go into all sorts of different places. Sometimes they're out in country when he's 11, and then back at school when he's 12, and then back on country again at 13, and so on. And just talking about the post-sync, or for me, what I'm sort of thinking of more as Foley. Because the material was recorded over such a long period of time, over all sorts of different recording equipment, all I could really salvage was words and none of the movement and none of this, because it was all recorded so wildly differently. So it was very, strange. So I actually went out to location to record the Foley so that it was outside with the same sort of acoustic as the show. But that was just because I had the time myself to do that. It's very rare in post-production for docos that there's a Foley budget.
Okay, thanks very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Another question?
Yeah, hi. I came to, television and sound about 2 years ago from 30 years in commercial music recording. Okay, arrogant and cocky. I've been doing this for 30 years, no problems. And oh my, it's different. So, and first, hats off to you for, I particularly in mixing, of course, when you mix commercial music, everything's coming in pure, pristine, and someone has lovingly spent hours getting that, 30-second track. So to suddenly start trying to mix location sound, like, oh my. And one of the issues I've got, I'm doing children's TV and I have an actress on location working. She's coming in through a DPA define. So we're getting reasonably clean audio. Then she is interacting with a puppet who's not speaking, obviously, on location. That's then going to be dropped in via a recording later on. The recording's done on a Neumann U47. And suddenly I have this unbelievably pristine puppet track, which I'm now trying to blend in with someone on a DPA on in one case in a bird park. And all of my skills went out the window and I just could not find any way of getting these things to sound like they were happening in the same location. So I was just wondering, David, do you have any,
Well, it's a struggle. I mean, this is the perennial problem that we have in doing sound, making it sound like it is homogenous, like it comes from one zone. I mean, look, if people looked at my equalisation curves on dialogue, if they were teaching in film schools, they'd just freak out and go, you can't do that. But, you have to go to extremes just to make things match each other. If there's one person talking and they're as thin as all get up and you can't do anything to improve them, the last thing you want to do is put them with a beautifully recorded, nice bottom-ending microphone. Everyone will notice that. However, no one will notice it if they're both thin. So unfortunately, part of the skill is working out what to just degrade so that you can bring things closer together to match.
Cool. Thank you.
And it's also fundamental that you're recording an Atmos track of the environment in order to lay that under everything, in order to create some sort of consistency. Yeah,
no, I figured that out after my first abysmal failure. Yeah. So.
A question for you, can you afford to hire David to fix it for you?
Pay rates are really low in this industry.
As you were talking about, I just want to comment, I run a commercial studio. We just had a band come in to record a 45-minute album. They booked 200 hours of tracking, 60 hours of mixing, and 10 hours of mastering for a 45-minute album. And I just thought, for any of the film people in the room, that's how it's done in the commercial audio world. So.
Wow. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, live audience, and thank you very much, streamers out there. We've had a wide range of topics tonight. We could go on for hours, but we do need to wind it up. So I just wanted to thank you, Ross, for bringing in all your gear. Thank you very much. And to give another plug for LEMAC, with a great range of equipment and changing by the week. So you can come in next week and there'll probably be different stuff on the table. And thank you, David, for your experience. Thank you very much for the clips and taking the time. And to Philip as well, thank you very much for the benefits of your experience. And Leo, please give them all a big hand. And we hope to see you at the next OzDox event. So please tell your friends, sign up on the OzDox website and keep in touch. Thank you. Thank you.